Are they 5:05? It's Christmas time, man. I don't know, officially.
I'm reconvening the meeting at 6:51 and 1/2. The next part of our meeting is public comments. At this time, members of the public may address the Board of Trustees regarding a matter of public interest not appearing on the agenda, but within the subject matter jurisdiction of the governing board per Education Code 35-145.5 and Government Code 54954.3. No action may be taken on comments of off-agenda items unless specifically authorized by law. In order to address the Board of Trustees, a speaker has the option of completing and submitting a blue card to the board's recording secretary prior to the start of the open session. Speakers wishing to address the Board of Trustees after the first public comment section of the agenda will have the opportunity to do so during any other public communications to the Board of Trustees later in the meeting. If the speaker wishes to address the Board of Trustees on an item on the agenda, time will be provided at the commencement of that item. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Per Board Bylaw 9323, the speaker will address the President from the podium when speaking to the Board of Trustees. Clerk Stowers, do we have any speakers?
We have one, Miss Emily Anderson.
I don't care. I'm gonna have it. Oh, there's a piece of cake up here. I'm short. Well, I have two things I want to mention. One, I'll start with the more serious one first, and that's just we've been kind of going through some things with my 5-year-old at Hopeview. He recently had an IEP. And one of the things that was just kind of on my mind is that there was no, at least this year, I think there was previously, pre-assessment of incoming kindergartners into the district schools, and I think that is a huge miss for the students as well as the staff and parents, because let me tell you, we have not had a good start of this year with my son. It's actually been terrible. My daughter is doing amazing, but with the start of everything with my son, his birthday is June 7th. I don't believe he meets the cutoff for TK. And I would love to see TK be this thing that's great that's just on an as-needed basis, not this like strict, I think it's like a 2-month window. But the problem was that there's no, even like a questionnaire or a survey or something, you send home to parents and ask them questions so you can kind of get an idea or a feel of what does their kid maybe belong MAT tested, do they maybe belong in TK, or which kindergarten class would you put them in, the higher, the middle, or maybe the lower end of, academics. So that's my 2 cents on that one. I would sincerely hope that that would really be thought out before the beginning of next school year. And on a more positive note, last Friday, had a rousing good time at Vista View, invited by Miss Singer to their bingo family fun night. It was so much fun. My daughter got a little crazy competitive with me on it. The kids ran around, had a great time. We had hot cocoa, pozole, which was yum. Just an awesome fundraiser. I hope they do it again, and I had a great time and putting, money to a good cause to help one of the middle schools. I would love to see more schools do that because I think it probably raised a good amount of money. And if they do it again, I hope that more people would go because it was a really great time and a really good opportunity to support the schools, and everyone had a great time, some good prizes, and it was just a really fun night. So that's all. Thank you.
Please don't sit down. I have a question for you, too.
Okay.
Have you taken advantage of the statutory right you have for a speech assessment of your son?
I think he was speech assessed.
Do you have the written assessment?
I don't have it in my hand right now, no.
Have you had one?
He's good in speech. They did the full eval assessment on him at Hope.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is under California state law, there's 12 different rights parents have to different assessments. Some of them are pretty extreme and obscure, but 2 of them are the speech assessment and a psychological assessment.
I think both were done.
Before you enrolled, did you have, he's a very active little boy,
He
Do
is.
you have any
Point of order, Mr. President.
thoughts?
This is
Yes.
public comments.
Yes, it is. I'm asking for clarification.
You can't enter into dialogue. You can just ask questions. I just caution you, sir.
Thank you. Trustee Clayton Turman?
You can ask questions, clarifying questions that it's not a violation of the Brown Act. I'll just keep it a little bit short only because we're on a schedule right now.
Are you suggesting that if we had notified parents, in your case, before you enrolled, that you had a right to certain...
I think there should have been a pre-assessment or possibly MAT testing across the board.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
There are none, sir.
We'll move on to... Yes. No?
Nothing submitted.
Okay.
Good. Okay, let that be on the record. Trustee Clayton Turman?
I'd like to remind the Board of Trustees that when you'd like to speak, you raise your hand and be called upon by the presiding officer, which is the President, John Briscoe, and we not have any extra talking or questions without being recognized first. That's a violation of Robert's Rules of Order.
Robert's Rules of Order calls for standing up to be recognized or raising your hand, or as the President deems, and I'm okay with raising the hand, so we'll continue with that. Item M1, written communication to the board. Superintendent?
Yes, you have it on the dais. There's a written communication from Christy Angelis regarding the Harborview bathrooms.
Thank you. M2, board reports. Superintendent?
There are no reports this evening.
M3, trustees communication, starting with Clayton Turman. Trustee Clayton Turman.
Thank you, President Briscoe. First and foremost, I would like to congratulate you once again, and Trustee Singer and Trustee Souders. You all made a fine showing this past election, which brought out 71% of the electorate. It was the highest voter turnout since the 1970s. And I believe that this high voter turnout brought you all to victory. And I'm very proud to have helped and worked to get you elected and to see you here once more. Also, thank you to the Mesa View Band under the direction of Mr. Nicolosi for bringing the children tonight to be able to entertain with the great songs. I have visited several schools in the past several weeks. One is Hopeview, where my younger son attends, and had the privilege to also attend the Holiday House, which is a great event that the PTO puts on, where kids get to come and shop. They bring their money and they get to go around and pick gifts for their families and friends, and it's great. And the superintendent came to also see this, and as well as Trustee Singer. It was very nice. I also went to Harborview, and I saw a really great performance by the Marine View Jazz Ensemble, and I believe the band was there, and the kids did dancing and singing and showed their program to the younger kids at Harborview, and I hear they were sort of doing a tour of the different schools to be able to showcase that program. So that was really great to see. Tonight and tomorrow there's a great event in Oakview. It's a feast or a celebration for the Virgin Mary. It's one of their biggest highlights of the year. We're going to be attending tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to that. And some other events that are going to be going on in the community as well this week for the holidays. And lastly, I'd like to say happy birthday to Cindy Pulfer. Oh, you do such a wonderful job for all of us, putting together so much information and keeping Dr. Conroy straight and organized. And we just appreciate you, so we wish you a great birthday that you're celebrating with us.
Very lucky.
Trustee Singer?
Good evening. I too attended the Hopeview House of Holidays that was put on by the PTO there, and also it was beautiful. It was a great opportunity to see children not only learning to shop for their parents and significant people in their lives, but budgeting, realizing how much money that they actually have and what could they afford to buy. And then it was really nicely wrapped by volunteers, put together so they could put it under the Christmas tree and then let it be a surprise. So that was really nice. I was also able to attend the Vista Bingo Night, and it was a successful event. It was a lot of fun. A lot of community members were there, and it really was nice to see everybody come out and have fun together. So that was a great event as well. Today I attended Teacup, a fundraiser for Vista View, where they are raising funds for their sports uniforms. So I went over there and participated in that. That was a lot of fun. And again, I just want to thank the voters of Ocean View School District for electing me to represent you. It's a very proud moment for me. My parents were here, and it was really nice for them to see what hard work it actually paid off. I was very, very excited about it. So thank you for electing me. I'm really excited, and I hope that I can make you proud to continue to be a great advocate for all of our students and represent everyone. And that is it. Thank you. I wish all of you a great holidays.
Thank you.
Trustee Souders?
Yes, thank you, President Briscoe. I would like to echo a lot of the sentiments that have been said here already this evening. I'd like to say happy birthday to Cindy Pulford. Congratulations. So I know this is exactly how you wanted to spend your birthday.
Absolutely. Of course.
I'd like to thank the Mesa View Band. They're a phenomenal band, wonderfully talented, and that comes from a fellow middle school teacher who has sat through other band concerts at other schools. They are really, really good. Very lucky. I would like to congratulate my fellow trustees on their election results. Thank you so much for your service, and thanks for stepping up and doing this job and doing it to the best of your ability. I really appreciate it. And I'd like to say thank you to the voters of this district for your faith in my fellow colleagues and myself as well. I will try to do my best to do you proud and to keep this district running in ship shape. Just a quick side note, since I am a teacher, for those of you who don't know, we take that oath quite a few times actually. We took it before the meeting today, before closed session, and then we took it again with Trustee Clayton Tarvin. And you also take it when you sign up to run for election as well. And when the election results come in a lot of times at night on TV, you think that's when it's a done deal, but that's actually not when it's a done deal. You have to wait for several weeks for the election to actually be certified, and then they finally certify the election results and make it official. And then a couple days ago, yesterday actually, I received this in the mail. And this is an official certificate of election from the state of California, County of Orange, and it basically just says, congratulations, you won. So this is your official, actual slip of paper that, I don't know where I'll put it, but maybe on the wall we'll see. But it's kind of interesting to see it sort of a behind the scenes look. If you've never run for public office, that's what you can expect. You get a nice little piece of paper. Anyways, thank you. And the last thing I'd like to say, happy holidays and Merry Christmas for those of you who celebrate Christmas. Because I don't think we're going to be seeing you again before the new year, and Happy New Year as well. Thank you.
Trustee Westwell.
I want to congratulate all our new officers. I'm sure that you're going to do an outstanding job for us this year. And I just want to say Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah to all our parents, custodians, and children, and wish them a happy winter holiday. Thank you.
And me. I'd like to publicly thank all of the voters who reinstalled me and my two counterparts as incumbents to our board to continue our great achievements that we've had heretofore. And then second, thank you very much, board, for your election as president. I'll do my best. I take all the help. If you have suggestions or comments, feel free to call or contact me after or during the meeting, as we've already seen happen here. Happy birthday, Cindy. I'm making this meeting go as fast as I can, so I'll refrain my comments to be very small. That concludes my comments. We're on to item M4, Superintendent Communication.
Well, I want to again congratulate our newly re-elected board members. I truly do believe that stability is important to the success of Ocean View, and we are building it. And it is wonderful to see our board members that were reelected. I want to talk a little bit about all of the holiday events that are going on around the district. As a couple of the trustees noted, two have been attending those events. We did have the holiday house at Hope View. I got to attend that. We also have the elf shop over at Circle View, and we also have an elf shop happening next week at Village View. So a lot of schools put on similar type of events. And we also have some music events coming up. As you heard, the Marine View students that were at Village View and at Harbor View, and I got to see them at Harbor View. And I'm going to go to a holiday performance at Star View, put on by Mrs. Kakamoto's third grade graders. And that will be on Thursday in the morning. And then also I'm going to go to Oak View to their tree lighting event on Thursday at 6:30. And then next week we have a whole lot of activities too. For example, Mesa View's putting on a concert. There's a holiday program at Village View. And then also I think this Friday morning is a sing-along at Lakeview. So I urge you to check out our district website, your school website, or just give me a call or give your school a call so you can come out and enjoy some of the holiday fun. Also, I want to give a shout out to the Huntington Beach Police Department, who is sponsoring our Shop with a Cop. That continues each year, and we have students that may need a little extra help at the holidays. One selected from each of our schools that will get to actually go shopping with a police officer to buy some gifts for themselves, but also for their family and friends. And then there's a bunch of volunteers there at Target that help wrap the gifts. And also Officer Fromm, who's in charge of this program, has put on an extra event where they're going to take the children to the Waterfront Hilton and have hot cocoa with Santa, and has arranged for the transportation and everything to happen for them on that special day. So lots of nice events and community outreach happening around the holidays. So I wish everyone a wonderful holiday break and much joy and happiness and health for the new year, especially for us here in the Ocean View School District. Thank you.
M6, Employee Associations Communications. So M5, PTA, PTSO, PTO, and PTSA President's Roundtable. Superintendent Hanson, will you speak, please? Unless we have a representative.
There are no representatives here, and we haven't had a get together with our PTA leaders for quite some time. I think we will not see them again until after the first of the year.
So see you again next year. Now we'll go on to M6, Employee Associations Communications, CSCA, please.
Good evening. My name is Jason Bozarth, and I am the CSEA Chapter President for Ocean View 375. I would like to start off by wishing everyone an enjoyable holiday season, and I would also like to congratulate the newly re-elected board members on their recent victories. It is said that there is a Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. We have faced down bigots, militiamen, neo-Nazis, and pulled this district back from the brink of ruin and chaos. As I look back on our time together, I cannot help but realize we have lived in interesting times. I cannot promise that we will not have interesting times ahead, but I can promise that my e-board and I will work with the district and its board to move us forward and guide its students, its employees, and its community into the future. I hope we have quiet times. I really do. But knowing the uncertainty of the future, I will take comfort and have faith that the leadership our voters have chosen will be able to navigate us through any troubled waters we encounter. Good luck to us all. And to everyone, I would like to once again wish a Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah on behalf of CSEA and Chapter 375.
Thank you. Ocean View Teachers Association.
Good evening, Dr. Hanson and trustees. OVTA would like to congratulate our newly elected and re-elected trustees. We're very, very happy that you were elected. This election proved that the Ocean View School District community supports their teachers. They also support the stability and your intentions and service as trustees on our school board, since you also have been serving with Patricia just being our newest member for 3 months, and it's been great. Also, I really want to speak to an amazing pool of substitute teachers that we have in the Ocean View School District. Our substitute teachers, we have so many that have worked in our district as substitutes, longer than I have been in Ocean View, a few of them. So that means more than 21 years that they have been serving as substitutes in our district. I have to say I have go-to substitutes that I've had since the first year that I have been here. And their commitment and dedication and enthusiasm for their work here in our school district is very, very, very positive for our students. And so I know you guys are going to be taking up a matter regarding our substitutes, so I really would like you to just consider the dedication of many of our regular substitutes. I have 2 in mind that I just really want to name out. And as a Oakview teacher, and then moved on to Sunview, and then moved on to Hopeview, Helen Held has been with me all the way, my 20 years with the school district. And then one of our favorite go-to substitutes at Oakview is also Robert Gomez. And there are just so many, but those 2 just really come to my mind. And then on a personal note, holidays are just such a special time for me as being a kindergarten teacher. December is the time when kindergartners realize that, oh my gosh, the teacher is actually teaching me something, and I can read now, and the lights go on, and they're so enthusiastic about learning, as well as they're so enthusiastic about the holidays, and there's just so many special things going on, and it's so nice that our community is here to support us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll move on to item O, the consent calendar. Is there a motion and second to approve the consent calendar? Motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. There is no discussion. We'll go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Approved 5-0. Motion carries. Item P, old business. There is none. Cindy, I'm working as fast as I can. Item Q, new business. Q1, administrative services, 2018 and 2019, first interim report. Is there a motion to second and approve?
I will move to approve.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Superintendent, is there a presentation?
Yes, there is. I'd like to have Dr. Conroy go to the podium and give our presentation. I think he has some additional staff he'd like to introduce and support him in his presentation.
President Briscoe, trustees, Superintendent Hanson. Tonight, presentation on our first interim budget. I would like to acknowledge Steve Burrow, our Director of Fiscal Services, as well as Jose Velasquez, our accountant, Terry Bonds, our financial advisor, or analyst, who have helped put together the materials in the booklet that you received on Friday. So here's our presentation. This is the budget calendar, starting where we are here tonight at first interim, which we followed in January with the governor's budget proposal. Every budget proposal, every budget presentation that we give to the board, it's important to understand that it's a point in time, what we know at that time. And every time we have a presentation, new material, new information always comes forth. In March, we'll give the second interim, and then right at March-ish, we are starting really the budget development for the following school year, for the 2019-20 year. Then in May, we have the governor's May revision to the January budget, and then in June, we bring to you the final budget adoption for the following school year. So this is just a pictorial view of the 3-year budget cycle. Right now, we're in the 2018 and because of statute, we are required to present a 3-year, multi-year projection budget to the Board of Trustees. Tonight is the first interim report, which gives us the first review of where we are after all the financial data through the end of October. As I shared in a few months, we will be starting the development of the 1920 budget. So we're really taking that look ahead. When we come in March, we will be sharing with you those first projections for the 1920 3-year cycle. So tonight's presentation, these are the components. We'll review the multi-year projections, budget assumptions, general fund revenue and expenses, the ending fund balance, district contribution to restricted programs, and then cash flow. It's important to understand that the multi-year projections are estimates only. They are, as I shared earlier, what we have, the information we have at that point in time. We get information guidance from the Orange County Department of Education, School Services of California, as well as the Department of Finance and the Legislative Analyst's Office. We're looking at trends, and the budget, is this the plan, the district's plan, and we look for trends as we look forward. And when we look at our the criteria for certification, we're really looking at the bottom line in our fund balance. So these are the assumptions coming into the 3-year cycle. The statutory COLA for 2018-19 was 2.71, which was augmented by 0.99% for a fiscal year COLA of 3.0%. As you can see, in the next 2 years, it drops down to 2.57 and then a slight increase in the 3rd year. As we've talked about before, the employer rates for retirement for employees certificated and classified are continuing to increase. We see in the 3rd year for STRS, for the certificated, it increases by half the percentage amount that it had prior, although PERS continues to increase. In 18-19, the current year, there is one-time discretionary funding that we budgeted in the first interim. That was not included in the budget adoption. The funding is just becoming available. As we've talked about before, we are declining enrollment, and those are our projections for the current year, the next 2 years, and then the corresponding ADA for those years. It's important to remember that ADA is funded on the prior year, so that's kind of an offset. As we've shared in the past, there are costs that the district incurs before we even actually start doing business, and that's part of the issue that we have budgetarily. We have step and column, which automatically is, we calculate for salaries as well as statutory benefits from year to year, both certificated and classified employees. As I mentioned, the CalPERS and the CalSTRS retirement liability contributions the district makes as a district. You can see the increased cost there. Just to share that, when you add those two together, you can see the significant dollar amount that is handed to the district before we even start business as we project into the year these costs. Then we have a total increase in costs. When we look at the step and column, if we're looking at 1920, if we look at the $705,000 for step and column, we look at the $1.1 million for the PERS and STRS retirement liability, the total increase is $1.8 million. We've got that budgeted before we even start doing business. And then when we look at the difference in revenue from the prior year, this is the LCFF revenue, whether it's an increase or decrease, when you add those two together, you get the net impact in terms of revenue funding to the district. And in 1920, we're already looking, before we start doing business, we're taking a hit of $2 million. So that has a huge impact on the district's financial stability and structural deficits that we've been talking about because of these costs that are incurred on a year-to-year basis. So this is the combined general fund revenues. And as I mentioned earlier, we've got declining enrollment and we have lower COLAs. And as a result of that, and when you look from the 18-19 to 19-20, the LCF revenues decreases. As I mentioned earlier, we have one-time discretionary funding in 18-19 that we don't have in 19-20, so that's another $1.4 million in the out years, why you'll see that there's a decrease in revenues for 1920 as compared to the 18-19 school year. So that contributes to that deficit that you see at the bottom line, where it's a decrease in revenues compared to the prior year. So this shows just the breakdown of our revenues. 80% of the funding that we receive comes from the local control funding formula. As in the past, it was the revenue limit. So our revenues are $88.7 million. We look at our expenditures. We start with certificated salaries, and you can see across the board slight increases in certificated salaries, and that would be from Step and Column for certificated as well as classified. The employee benefits increases, you have statutory payroll benefits, but the biggest part of the increases are the CalPERS and CalSTRS retirement contributions that the district has to make. We've got books and supplies, operating expenses, capital outlay, other outgoing support costs is the indirect costs that we receive for supporting other programs within the district. So you can see our expenditures do increase. And at the bottom line, you can see increases at almost $850,000 current year over prior year, $940,000 in 1920 over the current year. And then in 2021, $1.5 million over the 1920 school year. And you can see the percent increases at the very bottom. So we look at our the breakdown. 45% of our personnel costs are for certificated, 17% is for classified, 24% is for benefits for all employees. Again, that would be statutory payroll benefits, the CalPERS and STRS retirement benefits, as well as health and welfare. Our total expenditures are $89 million. Our unrestricted labor cost is 88%. We look at this is our getting to the multi-year as we get to our fund balance. So we start with our revenues and we take out right away as the encroachment. Those are the funds that we have to use out of the unrestricted general fund to support restricted programs. Special ed, routine restricted maintenance are the two primary ones. And that gives us the net revenues in the current year, 18-19, that leaves us with $61 million. We're budgeting $14 million in district contributions or encroachment. $61.1 million, and we have $61.8 million of planned expenditures, which provides a deficit spending in the current year of $631,000. And again, this is a budget plan. Doesn't say this is how we're going to end. If you recall, the unaudited actuals for 2017-18, we ended up with a surplus of $3 million. And that's, of course, over the course of the years. And so this is the projection based on the information we know today through the end of October, where we project that we may end this school year. Our beginning fund balance was what we ended last year with, was $10.6 million. And so when you take the 10.6 and subtract $631,000, our ending fund balance, will be $10 million. That becomes our beginning fund balance for the next year in the same cycle. It happens through the 3 years. When we look at the components of the ending fund balance, we start with that $10.6 million. We take out the $600,000, and so our ending fund balance is $10 million. Of that, $47,000 is reserved for our revolving checking account the district uses on a day-to-day basis to do business. Our stores and warehouse value is at $55,000. Our required reserve, 3%, is $2.6 million, so that leaves $7.2 million that are unappropriated, unbudgeted. We have 11.7% reserve above the 3% that we already have required. So for this year, we have a healthy reserve. But because of the deficit spending that I spoke about before, you can see in each of those years it decreases. But bottom line, in the 2021, we still have enough reserves to conduct our business, and hence at the end of the report, which I'll share with you, we will have a positive certification. I mentioned the contributions to restricted program or encroachment, almost $11.5 million is for special education. Routine restricted maintenance, that's our maintenance and primarily salaries, so those tend to go up just on the norm because of step and column, and employee advancement in the salary schedule, $2.5 million. We have to contribute $15,000 to the federal state preschool program, so our total contribution is $14 million, which is about almost $450,000 more than we had last year, or a 3.2% increase in our contribution to the restricted programs. Although what I just shared with you is important, it's a budget plan. What's more important is this single slide here, and this is our cash flow. This is our projected cash flow of the funding money's coming in. And you see some spikes, and I would like to address that. In July, it looks like there's a little bit of spike. Well, we had our ending fund balance was $10 million, and that carries over. So the funding that we get in July, coupled with the funding from the prior year that carries over, gives us that little spike. But as you know, the tax revenues come in December and April, and so there are the two major spikes in December and in April. January has a spike because it's just from January to February, you see a big drop down there. In January, there's actual two payrolls that happen in January. You have the December, which is deposited into employees on the 1st of January, and then you have your January payroll. So you really have two payrolls in January, and that accounts for the big drop there. The important piece of information really is in June, that this number is positive and is well above zero. And during the economic crisis years, you would often find that June, even May sometimes, would be very low to the zero or even below the zero, which means you had a negative, projecting a negative cash flow. And that's when districts would have to go for trans or have to borrow, do interfund borrowing to maintain, to be able to do business. So we're looking at statewide challenges. Declining enrollment, and pension costs continue to pose a significant issue for districts across the state. The state as a whole is declining enrollment between 1% and 2%. The biggest issue, as I kind of alluded to before when we've had the conversation, is the pension expenses. They've increased $3.4 billion since the legislature passed the funding plan to the schools in 2014. In the next 2 years, the LAO is projecting that the pension cost to school districts is going to increase about $900 million in the 1920 year and another $600 million in 2021, which is our third year of this current multi-year projection. The key for school districts is that there has not been any revenue stream that has been attached to the PERS and STRS increase obligations for school districts. Although Governor Brown said that you had the LCFF and any increase there, it's a local decision, you can apply it to those funding. Or you could do that, but then at the sake of other programs that you wouldn't be able to fund. You know, Governor Brown was a very strong advocate of K-12 education. Governor-elect Newsom is a very ardent advocate for early childhood education. As you recall, he brought in universal preschool programs when he was mayor of San Francisco, although he's not quite as big a supporter of K-12. However, he did appoint Mana Santos as his cabinet secretary, and she served as the budget director for the Department of Finance for both Governor Brown and Governor Schwarzenegger, and she was intimately involved in the construction and development of the LCFF. So she's had her hands and fingerprints all over the development of the LCFF, so it's a hope by the Education Coalition that she will be a strong advocate to keep the LCFF in place and moving forward into the next couple of years. Locally, again, we do have a structural deficit. There are issues that contribute to that, meaning our declining enrollment, which I mentioned, as well as the low COLA environment in which we are in now that we're 100% funded for the LCFF. Future funding is going to be COLA only. Because we're 100% funded. So as costs increase, like I shared in that one slide of opening the doors, as well as other expenses, it's going to be a tight budgeting plan to deal with the increased costs with the limited future funding that we foresee. We know we've talked about the encroachment to the unrestricted general fund, and we have not yet started negotiations for employer associations, so there's nothing reflected in the first interim for for that. We are sharing that, based upon the information we know today, that we are asking the board to certify that the district's first interim, that we will be able to meet our financial obligations for the current fiscal year and 2 subsequent years, thereby being a positive certification. So next steps tonight, asking the board to approve the first interim budget, self-certified as positive in January, will be the governor's budget proposal and the impact on the 2019-20 school year. And we start beginning, as I shared earlier, looking at the development of the 19-20 district budget. January to March, we'll be planning for the second interim, as well as continuing the LCAP development and the end-of-year update. And with that, we know that there may be gloomy days ahead, but we're always looking for the rainbow at the end of the pot, and hopefully that is here in the Portion View School District. And that concludes my report.
Any further discussion, board? Trustee Clayton Tarvin.
I'm on page 15, at the 5th bullet point down. This statement looks like opinion. I'm not really sure where that's coming from, where it says Governor Brown was a strong advocate of K-12. Well, some might have said that. That's again an opinion from me, I guess. New Governor-elect Newsom is an ardent advocate for early childhood education. Yes, he was when he was the mayor, but he's changed a lot since then. I've never heard that he's not a big supporter of K-12. I actually had sat through several live debates and watched him debate his primary opponents, and he actually beat out for the endorsements of CTA and CFT, California Teachers Association, California Federation of Teachers. He beat out Delane Easton, who had been a classroom teacher and frankly had been a leader in CFT. He also beat out Antonio Villaraigosa, who had been a labor rep and a big leader in CTA. So I say we should just take a wait and see approach. I think he's going to be very good for education. I'm hoping that he will be. If he starts to go astray, I'll have no problem in calling him and talking to him. I served as his Orange County campaign ambassador. And when I saw that he made one decision that I was not in agreement with, I called him and told him so. And I will be happy to do that again, because our schools need the attention that, frankly, I think Governor Brown didn't always give us. So anyway, I'm not sure where this came from. Is it just from kind of observations, or where was this statement coming from?
This information has been shared with me in education settings.
Okay.
Put it that way.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to dig a little more on this one then. Very interesting. Okay, I guess we're gonna have to wait and see what he does, but we're definitely not going to let him do anything to harm education, I can tell you that.
There's high expectations that he's not going to change the course of what direction we're heading.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion, board? Trustee Westwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am on page 11. The net decrease, 631,288, and I'm comparing that to the number in the first interim on page 1 under the general fund, which shows 376,260. I discussed that earlier with you, that number, and I'm wondering why the two don't match.
Well, what I'm sharing with you here is you taking the revenue and you take out the encroachment piece, which gives us this number here. So it's not directly coming out of the interim report per se, but the data is from the information that you find in the interim report. I've just reorganized it a little bit differently. So
So correct me if I'm wrong, the 631,288, that's what we're deficit spending.
That's what we're projecting, which will be a deficit spend for the current year, at this point in time, based upon what we know.
And I see how you get there. When I look on the first interim, I'm expecting to see the same number, and it's like half that. So I'm just trying to figure out.
I understand that, and as I shared, I've taken the unrestricted revenues, and if you're looking on the general fund on page one, you're looking at the unrestricted restricted. This is strictly unrestricted, so I'm looking at the unrestricted.
Oh, unrestricted, I see, okay.
Okay, so I'm just trying to put this in a more simple term in terms of dealing with revenues, the encroachment that we have to take out, which will leave us with a net revenue amount, taking away the expenditures, and what's that deficit number look like, and then how do we deal with that?
Okay. On page 12, the mandated reserve, 2,685,380.
Page-
Very page at
Page 12 of the presentation,
Yeah.
okay?
So the mandated 3% is 2,685,000.
Yes.
And then the available balance greater than 3% is 11.7. So that's 11.7 above the 3%.
Correct, that's 7.2.
So we're flush with cash at the moment.
But this is not cash, this is budget plan,
Okay.
okay?
So
So
the budget amount looks like we have plenty of money for that reserve.
yes, in the current year,
And
yes.
so we have budgeted the 3% in a pigeonhole in an account someplace, and then the rest of the money we have available other places that we could use for that. Is that how that pans out?
The simple answer is yes.
Okay. And let's see. LCFF, page 2 of the first interim.
Okay.
Enrollment on the top line.
Yes.
I'm looking at numbers from year to year to year, going from left to right, and we see a declining enrollment of 213 students in 13-14 to 14-15, and right down the line we see a decline of then 285, and then 258, and then 254, and then this year 279, and then we're projecting for the next year all of a sudden only 125. And then it goes up to 187 in the following year, and then dramatically decreases down to only 44 in the last year. How are we anticipating these future numbers? Because they seem to be wildly changing. If we're constantly going declining enrollment, it seems like it would almost be a linear scale that we would kind of use. So I'm missing something somewhere.
We look at grade level cohorts. And I'll give you an example. In the last couple of years, our 8th grade class has been over 1,000 students. Okay. So to have a linear progression, say of no decline, we would expect to have 1,000 kindergartners come in. Equal loss, equal gain. We're losing over 1,000. Now it's a little bit less than 1,000 8th graders. Our kindergarten enrollment has gone from a couple of years ago from 850, dropped to 750, went up to 845, dropped to 745. We're getting this up and down with kindergarten enrollment. When we go based upon enrollment, cohort enrollment, meaning grade level cohort, you'll see a fluctuation because if you have an 8th grade and a kindergarten, incoming kindergarten at 850, and we track it each year, and we know historically how much at each grade level or through the 8th grade, how many students we may lose out of that cohort. The next year you drop off 100 to 150 kindergartners, you now have a sway across 8 years that's going to happen in terms of enrollment. And what we're dealing with is looking at the projections on kindergarten to project forward. So in the current year, because it dropped back down, we're taking the conservative approach in terms of our grade level cohort development and keeping that same number for the next couple of years. And that then has an impact in terms of what happens as we grow or we don't grow from the kindergarten grades through 8th grade. That's the growth piece or the non-growth piece. The other part that we have to take in consideration is at each time there's an 8th grade class, that class is larger than the incoming kindergarten class, which means we lose even more. So it's a very complicated process. We project out 3 to 4 years. We look at the trends in the grade cohorts. We look at the kindergarten. We do have Davis demographic information that we look at, although when we look in our actuals compared to how they had projected, they're not quite as consistent or as, I don't want to say accurate being the right word, but as close to the projections as what we have been doing with the grade level cohort model.
Okay. Looking at the last year out where we're showing only a decline of only 44 students, what if we're wrong?
Are you referring to 2021, 21, 22?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, being the devil's advocate, let's say we're wrong and that number is closer to 200 like it's been, what impact on our budgeting is that going to have?
Well, we'll have a corresponding reduction, projection in ADA, which then when you put in the LCF calculator for revenues, there's a decrease there. What we currently do and what we've been doing is that we track the enrollment and then we wait to second interim to make the adjustments from a budgetary perspective in the out years of our multi-year projections that relates to staffing. We realize that any decline in enrollment is a decline, has a corresponding correlation to staffing. So then we look at the grade level cohorts by grade level. We look at kindergarten through 3rd grade and primary because they have a different staffing ratio than does 4 to 8. So we do a calculation of what would be the projected reduction in staffing that we would have to, I'm talking to teaching staffing, that then we would project in the out years that we would have to reduce to align the budgetary expenses, payroll expenses, with the corresponding enrollment reductions.
Right,
so one of the things also that we do is that we have we've been doing an attendance incentive program to incentivize schools to try to maintain a 97% ADA every month when we do enrollment. And when we look at the projections in the LCFF calculator in this section, it will show over the last 4 years we've been doing that. We've been almost 97% in each of those 4 years. And so it's proving out in our data of our efforts within the district, as well as the data that is showing in the LCFF calculator, that our efforts are working to maintain that high level.
If we were off by 150, you know, instead of being only 44, it's 150. Approximately, how many FTEs would that involve?
As I said, we'd have to disaggregate the data between primary and upper and middle school. It depends on where the loss is to make the corresponding number of teachers that we would have to look at.
We don't have a ballpark at all.
No. Okay. Well, you know, roughly, if you want to use 30 students per staff, and then you just divide it by 30, and that will give you a very rough estimate of what we might be looking at.
Thank you for that rough estimate. And let's see. The last one is General Fund 5. Well, I must have mismarked it or something, so I'll let somebody else go, and if I find this thing, I will, we'll talk again. Thank you. Oh, I do have one more thing. If I may, Mr. President?
Yes, please proceed.
Where can I find our lease income, the Lowe's property and the Walmart property? Where can I find that in here? Is that on page 5?
Well, you're not going to find a direct to it in the criterion standards, which would be found
Very last one.
on page 17 of 26 in the criterion standard general fund. It's the last section of the book. It references S6A, and on page 17,
I'm sorry.
S6B.
Which page?
16.
On page 16 and 17 of the criterion standards, so you'll see our lease, capital leases, and our certificates of participation. Although it doesn't specifically address the lease income because it's talking about the COP payments, our COP payments are made from the revenues that are derived from the lease revenues that we get from our sites.
And that money is all spoken for already, right?
That's correct.
Because of the asbestos crisis way back when?
No. Well, yeah, yes, we have some COPs that were related to that. Was back in 2014. We've taken a couple of COPs since then, but the lease COP payments are coming from the revenues that we get from all of our leases.
Okay, thank you. No other questions?
Any other questions, discussion, questions, board? I have two. The question I get from the public is, what about that lottery?
Lottery counts for just about, I'd say at the most 2% of all the funding that we get. It's unrestricted, so it comes under other state revenues.
And then could you give me your best guesstimate projection of what the PERS and STIRS contribution rates will look like in 2025?
No, I couldn't.
Do you believe it might be approaching a 25% figure? Since it's at 20% coming up soon.
I don't have the projections, percentages with me. We can provide that to you.
That's fine. It's big and growing.
It's growing. At some point, it caps for certificated, I believe, in 2023, and caps, and then the classified is still increasing. The challenge, unfortunately, the Cal PERS Investment Board is doing a much better job of their investments than the STIRS pool is.
Meaning they're projecting less fantasy-like rates of return, or their actual investment returns are better?
Both.
That concludes my questions. I'll call for the vote. This is an action item. We're approving first interim. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries 5-0. QT, Administrative Services, acceptance of apparent bid results and award of contracts for food service equipment for the central kitchen project. This is for motion, for action. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a motion to second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Q3, Administrative Services, Amendment Number 1 to Independent Contractor Agreement between Ocean View School District of Orange County and Lighton Consulting, Inc. for geotechnical and materials testing services. This item is for action. Is there a motion to approve?
No.
Who said that? Trustee Singer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Clayton Tarvin. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Q4, Administrative Services, Amendment Number 1 to the Independent Contractor Agreement between Ocean View School District of Orange County and Dealey Merkawa Howe, Inc. for the Central Kitchen Project. This item is for action. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second? I'll second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Q5, Administrative Services, ratification of equipment lease agreement between Ocean View School District of Orange County.
Point of order.
Yes.
Can you please report out the results of the
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Westwell. The motion carries 5-0. Q5, Administrative Services, ratification of equipment lease agreement between Ocean View School District of Orange County and Mobile Kitchens USA, Inc. for temporary food service facility, or is it faculty? Facility. At interim housing site. This item is for action. Is there a motion to approve? Is there a motion to approve?
I will approve.
Is there a motion to second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, please.
Trustee Westwell.
Mr. President, why is this a ratification?
I'd like to call on Superintendent Hanson to explain the ratification aspect.
I'm going to pass it to Dr. Conroy.
We are in a timeline for the central kitchen for the current current central kitchen we have at Westmont to be able to demolish the current central kitchen that we have. And in order to do that, we needed to have some place to house the food service operations. We've been working with our timelines, and we've been working with this company in terms of when they were able to have the equipment and the time frame in which to deliver it to us, because we were on a timeline and we didn't know when they were going to have the equipment available. And when it did become available, it was on a timeline that we wanted to make sure we got it in order for the production of whatever they needed to do so that we can get it delivered. And it's supposed to be delivered this Friday so that we can transition out of the central kitchen because they're already packing and they have everything wrapped up, ready to go. So it'll be delivered, and then we can start demoing Westmont to stay on our timeline for construction at Westmont and have some place to do our food service productions.
Well, I understand the process, but we've been discussing this for quite some time. So what is the need to hurry up and rush with ratification? Is just going instead of using the normal?
Because if we waited till tonight to pass and get board approval, we would not get the kitchen, mobile kitchen delivered on Friday. It would delay it until January, which would then throw our whole timeline off construction because we wouldn't be able to do the demolition at Westmont.
And I appreciate the tough timelines. I appreciate your explanation. If at all possible, I'd like to try to avoid the ratification process in the future, if we can avoid it. But I thank you for your answer.
We always try to avoid a ratification, and I think you'll see that there's very few. But with so many different construction projects going on at one time, sometimes we aren't able to meet those timelines according to our board meeting dates.
And I appreciate the
I
answer.
recognize the board's priority.
I appreciate the answer, and I understand the issues involved and the number of balls that we have in the air on that particular project. Thank you.
For the education of the audience, whenever you see the word ratification in a governance document like this, it means action has already been taken or actually work started and begun. And the governing body, in this case our board, is approving it after things have already started. The normal process for things to happen is the board approves it before any action is taken. As Dr. Conroy explained, sometimes timelines get compressed, and so ratifications happen instead of approval beforehand. Is there any other discussion? Okay, all those, and I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Q6, Administrative Services, Resolution Number 08-1819, Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Ocean View School District of Orange County relating to information made available to the public in the form of a statutory school facility fees, reportable fees report, including alternative school facility fees for fiscal year 2017-2018, and making related findings thereon in compliance with Government Code Section 66006 and 66001. This item is before us for action tonight. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I have one question, Mr. President.
Trustee Westwell?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, have all the statutory requirements been satisfied for this item?
Superintendent Hanson, could you help us with that, please?
Yes, they have been.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item Q7, Administrative Services, Use of California Multiple Award Schedule, CMAS, to Digital Scepter Corporation, Contract Number 3-08-70-2626A, for the purchase and warranty of hardware, software, and software maintenance. This item is before us for action. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
It has been seconded and moved. Is there any discussion?
Yes, please.
Trustee
I
Westwell.
just want to confirm this is a piggyback purchase order?
No, this is a CMAS contract, so it's a state contract. It's been vetted through state process.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Administrative Services, File notice of completion, Spec Construction Company, Inc. and Daniels Electrical Construction Company for the interim housing project 17-299. This item is before us for action. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Second? Is there a motion to second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion?
I have a quick question.
Trustee Souders.
Yes, do we have staff that goes through and works with these teams on their final punch to make sure everything's done to our specifications as well as theirs?
Yes.
And what staff member would that be?
Jim Choate and Ledesma Meyer, we have regular construction meetings. These are all kinds of things that are discussed
And they walk the site?
regularly.
Okay. Thank you for the
They're
question.
pretty much camping out here.
All right, sounds good.
Is there any further discussion? I have a question. File notice of completion. That those words specifically, notice of completion. Is that another way to say it gets closed out officially, finally? So the years of having all these floating projects are now closed out will come to an end under your administration, Dr. Hanson?
Well, yes, but I do want to give credit to Dr. Conroy, and this is for actually the interim housing project, which is over at the site originally known as Sunview, formerly known as Sunview.
I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Q9, Educational Services Agreement for Non-Public School Placement of Special Education Student as determined by Individualized Education Plan, IEP. This item is before us for action tonight. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Cindy, I'm hurrying. Q10, Educational Services, Contract for Independent Educational Evaluation, IEE, for student with special needs. This item is before us for action. May I have a second? May I have a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Second.
I'll call that for Westwell. Is there any discussion? I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Vote carries 5-0. Item Q11. Educational Services Independent Contractor Agreement between Ocean View School District of Orange County and Renaissance Learning Accelerated Reader for Oakview School for the 2018-2019 school year. This item is before us for action. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Is there a motion to second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Q12, Human Resources, Certificated Substitute Teacher Pay Rate Increase. This item is before us for action. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, please.
Could you please raise your hand high so I can see it? Trustee Westwell.
Well, we need to keep pace with districts around us so we don't lose substitute teachers like we apparently are. I just wanted to point out to the board that there is another, we've all got, if this passes tonight, it looks like we're giving everybody a raise, including substitutes. There is still one group of people that in this district who haven't gotten a raise in a couple of decades. I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Trustee Clayton Tarvin.
President Briscoe, do you know who that group is who's not had a raise?
I think it's a very small group. I think it's sitting in front. It's the Board of Trustees. There's a long and sordid history as to the rationale for not taking a raise, and those decision makers are gone from the board, and the decision remains. It's the Board of Trustees. Statutory law in California allows for a reimbursement rate for paying for gas money and that sort of thing for driving around, much higher than what this board has chosen to take, and annually this board has chosen to take no raise.
So, okay, well, we're not really talking about that, so we should probably not veer off too far off the path. Let's get back to substitutes. I am fully in support of raising the pay for substitutes for the Ocean View School District. I think starting back in 2012 when I was originally elected, I had subs people I know in the community that are substitutes approached me and said, are you gonna raise the pay for substitutes? And every year I would say things like, I don't, that's the superintendent's call and we'll figure it out. And, I think, the board would probably agree, but again, so I'm really pleased that Dr. Hanson and staff have brought this forth, because I have to say that Ocean View's pay rate for substitutes is one of the lowest in Orange and LA County, and substitutes have a lot of choice, places to work, frankly. And it's difficult, and as a classroom teacher, I can tell you when I need a substitute and the pay rate is about the same where I work in ABC Unified as this current pay rate. Sorry, this proposed pay rate. And a lot of them are going to LA Unified or Long Beach Unified because the pay is higher. It's really difficult, and I have to say that we should be all about the kids. And what's all about the kids is having a qualified substitute in the classroom. I mean, that's what we're doing here, is we're educating children. And so if you have, teachers out, which they are, being sick or, personal necessity days or whatever it is, you have to have the proper people in place to be able to come and teach the students. Here's what happens when you don't have a substitute or a good substitute. You come back the next day and you have to reteach your students the same exact lesson from the day before. And it's just really not great. So with this, I think we're going to be able to attract even more of the pool that we have now, and I'm really, really happy about this. This is a talking point in the community. People are going to be really excited about this. So thank you, Dr. Hanson and staff, for looking into this and bringing this to us. I'm pretty sure it's going to pass, so I like it. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Trustee Singer.
I'm also very pleased to see this. As a parent, I go to all the schools all the time, and I'm visiting in and out. And in the last few weeks, it's been a very hot topic as we're short. We can't find a sub. Why? Nobody wants to come work because we're paying them very little. So we're constantly short, especially middle school subs are really difficult to get, I heard. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I've experienced where they're constantly short twice during the week. They don't have enough subs. So I'm hoping that this will encourage more subs to come over our way. So I'm happy to see this.
Any further discussion? I'll make one comment additional. We apparently have a situation where we hire a sub, he or she says they'll be there, then they don't show up because they got a better offer from the school district. I don't know that paying a little bit more engenders better quality subs, but no sub at all means the principal has to go cover the classroom, or you get two classes together if there's nobody to cover it, credential. It's a big mess. So if we just have substitutes that show up with a small increase like this, that's a good thing. Any further discussion? I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Q13, Human Resources, Resolution number 06-1819-A, Resolution of the Board of Trustees of Ocean View School District of Orange County authorizing teaching assignments. This item is before us for action. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Trustee Souders.
Same question I ask every year when this comes up, or do we know whether or not these teachers are moving towards getting degrees in these areas?
We have a process to work with them and do that for people that are staying in that same position. Sometimes we just have to have somebody move 1 year.
Sure.
So if it's someone long-term, then Mr. Avila is working with those people.
Okay, thank you.
We actually see a decrease in the number of these this year.
I've noticed the list is getting shorter.
Is there any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All is aye. All those opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Q14, Human Resources, Williams Settlement Legislation, First Quarter Report, 2018-2019. This item is before us for information only. Are there any questions or comments? Because the pages are blank. We'll move on to item Q15. Superintendent's Office, Fiscal Year 2019 School Boards Association Delegate Assembly Nominations. This item is for information and for action. Does anyone on the board have any nominations at this time? Trustee Clayton Tarbin.
I'd like to nominate President John Briscoe to serve on the CSBA Delegate Assembly.
Thank you, and I will accept that nomination. Are there any other nominations? I will nominate Trustee Clayton Tarbin to serve on the Delegate Assembly. That puts 2 nominations in front of us. Is there any discussion? Trustee Clayton Tarbin.
I just wanted to say that I have served before in the Delegate Assembly. It is a very good body of people. It's basically an elected body of the electeds. So all of us in the California School Boards Association, that's many thousands of school board members, have a body that they elect to go and do business twice a year, to be able to discuss things that we want to take to the state legislature, lobbying, all of these sorts of things, resolutions, things that we want to put on the ballot. We work with many different government agencies. We discuss with the different labor unions in California, and it's a great way to get involved in the leadership of the California School Boards Association. And when things come up and people go, well, how do we get this changed? Well, you have to have a lobbying body, and this is part of that. So I would be honored to serve again.
Is there any further discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Yes, Mr.
Trustee Westwell.
How are we going to conduct this vote? I think we should have 2 separate votes since we have 2 separate candidates. I don't think it should be an all or nothing vote.
Any discussion by the board?
I didn't understand.
Trustee Westfall would like to have 2 votes for 2 individuals, not 1 vote for 2 people.
Well,
Trustee Westwell?
it's just a process question. My vote is going to be yes for both anyway, so it really doesn't matter. It's mostly a process question.
Trustee Clayton Tarbin?
I think in the past what we've done is we've put both names up at the same time. I recall doing that, but I think it would be fine to bifurcate it in this case. I think if as long as it's noted in the minutes, I think it's all right. I don't see any violation of the Brown Act in this case.
Yes. Trustee Souders?
I would recommend that we ask the question of our Secretary Cindy, keeper of all things sacred. She would probably know from previous years as to whether or not what we've done.
Thank you, Trustee Souders. Cindy, would you please elucidate and educate?
Either way would be fine.
So I'll call for a separate vote. All those in favor of Trustee Clayton Tarbin, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Trustee Clayton Tarbin passes 5-0. All those in favor of Trustee Briscoe, say aye.
Aye.
All those aye. All those opposed? Trustee Briscoe passes 5-0. Q14. Oh, thank you. Q14, Human Resources, Williams Settlement Legislation. Already did that.
16.
Q16, Superintendent's Office Review of Board Bylaws and Administrative Regulation 9323, Meeting Conduct, first reading. This is for information only tonight. It could and might and probably will come back for action later. This is before us for first reading. Is there any board discussion on this matter? It's several pages in the back. Trustee Clayton Tarbin.
President Briscoe, would you like to discuss what this entails?
This is my opinion, but I have read it completely. I'm an advocate for these changes. Previous boards have insisted that people fill out a blue card. If they didn't fill out the blue card, they couldn't speak. So if somebody came in here blind and couldn't see, they have to beg for somebody to fill it out for them. And the fact is, in front of an elected body, you can stand up and ask to raise your hand and ask to be recognized. And I would recognize that person in public comments to stand up and speak. And likewise, that applies to agenda items where people have a right to speak and comment on agenda items. We've removed the onerous burden of having to fill out a blue card. Although I need to say, it makes it easier to run the meeting when people fill out the blue card. I will continue to request and ask in the kindest way that speakers fill out a blue card so we can keep order and decorum. Does that satisfy?
Yes.
Trustee Clayton Tarbin?
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
I have one comment.
Trustee Westwell?
Okay, my comment is just, and I don't have a problem with people, it's for number 3 on page 2 of 5, Exhibit A, and it says a speaker, we're adding this, because it's in bold, I assume. A speaker who wishes to make a visual presentation on part of his or her comments shall provide the board said presentation to the superintendent's office at least 24 hours prior to the start of Board of Trustees meeting. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with people bringing in visual presentations, as long as they fit within their time frame. Should we be putting something in there about the content of the presentation so that we may in some way or another have board bylaws that back up our ability to limit anything that might be inappropriate, let's say?
It's a fair question, although if somebody does something that's slanderous or scandalous, it's on the speaker. Trustee Clayton-Tarvin?
Dr. Hanson and I have had to deal with this in the past when I was the president, and we did have time to review the presentation, and I believe that if there's something to be deemed, okay, look, here's the thing. We are elected officials. We can be libeled and slandered, and there's, you know, that's the way it goes when you sign up to be an elected official. So if someone brings a presentation and says, you know, X person is lying or whatever, people have the right to do that, okay? But if it's about somebody else, let's say they just pick a random person in the community and start calling them names and stuff, we don't want to be a party to allowing somebody from the microphone to be attacking, just say, a random community member. I think what we did was we reviewed the presentation and we saw that, I believe at the time there was something actually inappropriate in the presentation, I believe. But then it was corrected and it was made and all of that. Here's the thing, we can do this, we don't have to allow this. We can just have people make oral comments. This is something that's extra. I think that if our Board of Trustees decides we want to do this, it's a generous act to say, you know what, come to this is the board's meeting and the public is here to make their comments, but this is something extra, I believe. Now, at the City Council of Huntington Beach, which I've been to many times, they just take your flash drive, they put it in the computer, and you just kind of go, and they're hoping that people will act with proper decorum. That doesn't always happen. So I think, Trustee Souders, that's a really great question, and I think it goes with a sort of, each time we look at it. So maybe Dr. Hanson could weigh in, President Briscoe.
I can share a personal board experience from several years ago when a community member came in and handed out CDs to DVDs to everybody, and the superintendent at that time made a public announcement that he had viewed the CD himself with his own 2 eyes and characterized it as pornographic and told all the staff not to look at it at their homes or any place. It was, and he handed it out in the audience all over the place, and it was a great example of an extreme to what Trustee Souders brought up. And the answer is, he can distribute, well, he really shouldn't be distributing pornography. I don't know if it's pornography on the district campus site. Never got that far, but these things happen. Superintendent Hanson?
I had a question, Mr.
Well, Trustee Clayton-Tarvin had asked a directive to Superintendent Hanson.
One of the reasons that we include this on there is there's been some debate about are we accepting things or not, and so this way we are saying that we are accepting it if we get ahead of time, because sometimes there's issues of having it in a timely manner that it takes additional staff time on the night of the meeting to load things and have things ready. That was one of the reasons. We have to keep in mind that when someone comes to the podium, we don't know what's going to come out of their mouth. And there is, free speech during this time that people can say, what they want to say. And as Vice President Clayton-Tarvin mentioned, we will be victims of things. I think that by viewing it, we can alert the board that this is what we see, and we can make decisions at that time. But I think we have to caution ourselves that if we're going to allow this, we have to also adhere to the freedom of speech during this time.
Any other discussion? Trustee Westwell?
Yes, Superintendent is correct. We must adhere to this freedom of speech, especially when people come down here to communicate to the board their feelings. I have a question, Mr. President. When we talk about a presentation, does that mean the presentation using our video display here?
The reference to visual presentation isn't clear. I believe its intention is our projection, but a presentation could be an easel, and maybe that's something that could be clarified in the description. Does the person have to bring in their 3-foot by 5-foot easel presentation for review 24 hours before to put up before the board to look at?
No, we are referring to things that need to be projected through our projector and through our computer.
This is for information only, and the purpose of this kind of item is to fix those sorts of things.
And so I just need direction from the board. Do you want to be more specific in that, or do you want to keep it in? What is the wishes of the board at this time?
Mr. President, I wasn't done with my questions yet. I got an answer from the superintendent yourself, but I'm not done.
Right? Please continue.
I would suggest that we add in here, since I'm getting a nod from the superintendent that does include our display up here, that any presentations be provided to the district in the PDF format, which is a common format that we use here, and it'll make it simple for us to just plug it in and display it. There's a potential people could bring in presentations in a format that we just can't handle. And with a standard PDF format, I think that it standardizes it so everybody knows we're on the same page and what we expect from them and what they expect from us. So that's my suggestion there. I have some other questions I have. On the very first page, we're talking about the blue cards and the open session. Mr. President, I'd like to get a description of when open session actually starts in our meeting. What's the definition of when the open session starts?
6 p.m.
So that is at roll call. Is that what my understanding is? That's when open session starts. No, it starts when we call the meeting to order.
Starts when we call the meeting to order.
And so looking at our meeting tonight, it would be item A, the call to order, the very first item. And so I brought this up before, that historically when people have turned in the blue cards, historically this body has always accepted the blue cards for the first public comment session up until the end of the public comment period, or the first public comment period. And when I read through this, it says that we're supposed to accept the cards up until the start of the meeting. So we haven't been following our own bylaws because of that. And so I think we need to talk about that, what the actual start of open session is. I would like to see blue cards be able to be turned in and speak in the first session all the way up until the first public comments is over. Because a lot of people, they'll hear something and then they'll decide that they want to speak and they turn in their card, and we've been accepting it. So that's something that I think we should consider.
Anything else, Trustee Westwell?
Yes, on item 7, which has been crossed out as 6.
Which page?
Page 131, BB 9323. It's new item 7. If the speaker is reading from a prepared text which is intended for distribution to the board members, he/she will be requested to give the superintendent and recording secretary a copy. So who is this person who is assigned to do the requesting? Is it anyone? Is it everyone? Is it the superintendent? Is it their neighbor? Who is it?
I don't understand your question.
Well, it says he/she will be requested. So somebody is going to request that the speaker provide the superintendent the document that they're reading from. And so who is the person who's assigned to actually make that request? Because it says someone's going to do it. They're going to be requested, but it doesn't specify who.
Superintendent Hanson, do you have a clarifying answer for that question?
We don't have a regular practice for that, but I would assume that it would be the clerk who manages the public comments should ask for a copy of that.
And so, Mr. President, my suggestion would be to change the language to say the clerk will request the superintendent and strike out the other language. I think it's important to be clear who does what.
Is there an opinion? I'll come back to you, Trustee Westbrook. Trustee Clayton Carroll.
I'm not done, Mr.
Well, I want to
President.
talk about this particular item so we don't forget.
Well, let me just finish my comments before we move on, if you please, Mr. President. I do have the floor.
Go ahead.
On page 132, item 12. It says the Board of Trustees may order the meeting room cleared. Mr. Souders may remember that we didn't do this when he was president. Mr. Souders cleared the room, and so I just want to make sure, Mr. President, that you understand that only the board may clear the room, and not the president. Just want to make that clear. And then on page, what is it? I can't read it. 133, 136. We're striking out open session. And as I mentioned earlier, this is where open session starts, right at the call to order. We're striking it out. And this language is mentioned other places in the document, refers to open session. And so it makes it much more clear for the public to know when open session is if we write it right on there like we had it, yet we're scratching it out. And so I recommend we don't remove that open session because it's referenced in Board Bylaw 9323, number 1 and 2 on page 131. And with that, that ends my questions. Thank you.
Let's Trustee Clayton Carvin, we're going to go back to that other matter that came up that we jumped over.
Which one was that?
I don't know. That's why I wanted to stop and
I
address
did,
it.
exactly. My memory is slipping at this point. Okay.
Number 7.
Excuse me, I have the floor. Excuse me, I have the floor.
So proceed, Trustee Clayton Carvin.
Okay, so I actually suggest that we do not have the clerk be specified, or in fact even request those at the podium to turn over their handwritten notes or whatever. We don't need to do that. That's not something that is in I don't see that anywhere in the Brown Act or anywhere else in the Ed Code. You know, people come to the podium and say what they're going to say, and frankly, they can do that. They can start talking from their notes, and then they can go off script, and I just don't think that it's even needed. Okay, that's one thing. 2 is that I believe that the night that then President Souders had to clear the room, it was unfortunately because the people that were here created a total menagerie, free-for-all, screaming and yelling. And I understand that at the time, Trustee Souders wasn't exactly clear on the rule, and he actually deferred to me, and I said what I said, and then he had to do what he had to do. And frankly, other boards do that. There has been other times in other districts where there's been a disruption, and exactly what occurred that Trustee Souders did, he had to. It was an emergency situation. Okay, so in the future, and I've had to clear the room, and I did call for a vote. So you know what? It's happened. But when you're in charge of the meeting, sometimes things don't come to you right there and then. Now, as far as the speaking cards are concerned, I completely disagree with my colleague at the end of the dais. I have not been taking the cards past 6 o'clock. Totally false information, aka fake news. Yeah, okay? We have not been doing that since I've been the clerk. And if they are turned in after, they're given to me, and I have them for the second public comments. That's how we've been doing it. Now, I do agree with my colleague at the end of the dais that we do need to clean this up. Like, we do need to come to a conclusion on and a decision on how are we going to have this written out so that people are very clear on when those cards are due. So, I would suggest that even though the beginning of the meeting or open session starts at, say, 5 or 5:15 before we go into closed session, I would say that at the beginning of the open session that begins at 6 p.m., we have a time certain when these meetings are supposed to start for the public at the regular 6 o'clock time. We could say at 6 p.m., the cards should be due. We can say that because we have a time in our board policy. That would be my suggestion to you, President Briscoe.
We have a board consensus on that matter. Trustee Singer, do you have an opinion? 6 o'clock specified in the...
I think that would be great. I think
Trustee
that would
Savage?
clarify.
I'm okay with that.
Trustee Westwell?
Whatever we desire to do, as long as we're clear and the public is clear. I noticed that we have it written over there where the blue cards are, so whatever's written on the wall over there ought to match whatever we do.
Thank you. And Trustee Clayton-Tarver? So I think that Superintendent Hanson, that was pretty clear. We should specify a time and starting place for the blue card submission. Trustee Clayton-Tarver?
Yeah, I'd just like to say again that I think that actually if we need some guidance, we can always go back to CSBA to talk to them. They will give us free guidance or information about how to deal with it. We actually attended, Trustee Souders and Singer were there somewhere in the, sitting down away from me, but in the same session at CSBA, and we learned about, it was called Board Meetings Gone Wild. I thought actually we could probably host that session because we are sort of experts on that, although things have gotten more calm these days. However, it was the hired clerk of LA Unified. They actually have a paid clerk that makes several $100,000 a year. He's a staff member and he serves as the board's clerk. And he was there with a board member and they told us about how they deal with disruptive community members. They actually have a disruptive person policy. I thought it was fascinating. Our policy is pretty good on how to deal with disruptions, but I would suggest, President Briscoe, that maybe you could, or the superintendent could work on this together by contacting LA Unified and just maybe getting that presentation that the clerk made and to just kind of talk through with them like how they deal, because they get hundreds of people lining up almost at every meeting, or at least tens of, dozens lining up to make public comments. They have a real task to deal with, where people come to the podium and sell things, like advertise stuff, and just all different things. Because, they're on TV, so they're like, this is my new product, and it's free advertisement. So they were telling us some fascinating things. I suggest you get in contact with them before.
The presentation is available on the CSBA website.
I believe it is.
Superintendent Hanson, if you could get that, and we can look at that at our first meeting planning session. Trustee Westwell. No one actually, Westwell had to get that.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm on page 130.
Oh, it's all right. Oh, just a
Board
minute.
bylaw 9323. Meeting procedures at the very top, it says all Board of Trustee meetings shall begin on time and shall be guided by an agenda prepared, blah, blah, blah. And if we look at the very first part of our agenda tonight, right under 5:15 closed session at 6 p.m., it says, please note, all times are approximate. So we have a conflict there. So we say times are approximate, but the meetings will begin on time. So these two ought to be reconciled, I believe.
We can have a discussion or a study session on that. Thank you, Trustee Westwell. Trustee Souders.
Okay, I apologize for any confusion that may have incurred on my part with regards to number 3 on Exhibit A, page 205, 131. My intention was not to limit free speech in any way. My intention is to give us a little bit of munitions in our board bylaws, which would prohibit speakers from showing inappropriate language, inappropriate images. We do oftentimes have children in the gallery when these presentations are going on. And the more I think about it, the more I would caution the board of having this policy be part of it at all, simply because when you have someone coming in with a thumb drive and plugging it into your computer, I'm assuming our computers here are connected through Wi-Fi to our district, you are breaching the security of our system directly by having someone plug something into that, and they could have a virus in there that could then open us up to all kinds of problems. So I don't know how you want to remedy the situation. I don't know if other boards allow people to use their computers and their LCD projectors to display things. My intent, again, isn't to limit free speech. My intent is merely to protect the district and the children of the district and the members of the public of the district from seeing anything inappropriate.
Trustee Singer.
I just want to clarify, Trustee Clayton Tarvin, number 7. If I read this correctly, it says, if the speaker is reading from a prepared text which is intended for distribution to the board. We're not asking people to turn over notes. We're saying, if you intended for us to have this information, we're asking them to provide copies. So we're not saying somebody comes up here and they have an essay that they want to read to us. We're not asking them to turn that over. It's only if they intended for us to have a copy that we're saying, please make sure it gets turned in. That's it. So I'm okay with it. I think if we read it, it says only if they intended for us to make that be part of the information for us.
Raising my hand to follow myself. So Trustee Singer, what you're saying is that we're basically asking to make 7 copies instead of 5.
Correct.
Thank you. Trustee Clayton Tarvin.
The thing is we don't know if they intend. It's like, do we ask? If the person has to offer first to say, I intend to give this to you, well, if they do that, typically the president will say, can you please hand it to the superintendent? It's the president that runs the meeting. The president can decipher who's going to do this. It's like, it's not that big of a deal, really. But yeah, it's fine to leave it if that's the, yeah. It's okay. I just think that the president has to be, you have to be paying attention, and you are, so there you go.
Any other discussion? Trustee Westwell.
We can ask all we want. We can ask them to give us a car, a donation too, at the same time. They don't have to give it to us.
No, just a request.
They don't have to give it to us. Usually, it's been my experience that if somebody wants to provide something to the board, they will make 7 copies and they will bring it in and we'll all get one. And so I wouldn't worry too much about that asking. I think it's going one step too far on that. As far as plugging stuff in for presentations, the City of Huntington Beach used to not allow public presentations on their computer. And the reason that they have that today is because of me. I went out and got somebody to donate a computer. I took it to the city and said, here's your computer, just leave it here, I don't want it back. Anyone who wants to do a presentation can plug into the computer and away they go. And the city thought that was a terrible idea. At first they said that the same thing that we're considering, well, it might be a virus and we could infect our whole system, and that was the excuse that they gave me until I brought the computer in. Once I brought the computer in, they said, oh, well, now we could do it. We've got all this antivirus software, and it's actually easier for them to do it. As far as I know, they've never had a problem because they use antivirus software just like we do. You know, we have employees, I'm sure, that bring stuff in, and we can't afford to have those kind of issues either. So I don't really think that's a problem. It is true, however, that once that we allow that, people can put something in there, and we have to let them do it. They can use foul language. They can do a lot of things that most people would be very uncomfortable with. And we have to allow them to do it, as long as it pertains to the district and the issues. And it's my understanding that they can use foul language all they want, unless it's solely used to incite emotions. And if it's done for that purpose, then we can start shutting down. But if they're just talking and rattling on, and that's the way they normally talk, and we start shutting them down, that's a big problem. There's a switch right here that turns off the podium. And this switch has been used in the past, and we got sued for that. And so I'm really, really leery of suppressing people's speech. As much as we may not like things and what people say, we have to be tolerant in this world.
Trustee Clayton Tarvin.
Thank you.
Well, I think we better contact LA Unified because they have a policy that discusses decorum and what can and can't be said and all these things. And you can have all the rules you want. We can have all the rules we want. This is, again, per the Brown Act and the Ed Code. This is the board's meeting. This is a meeting that is done as a courtesy for the public to listen in. You can have decorum rules. You can. Yes, you can. If people should violate them, that's another story. But you can have decorum rules. And actually, at the city council, they do have. And they say right at the beginning of the meeting, they talk about it. The mayor reads it out. We expect you this, 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 and this. And you, well, people are just so well behaved at the city council, aren't they? Well, we don't say those things, and we've had some terribly behaved individuals here. Okay, so maybe we should have language like LA Unified or like the City Council does, just to give people a set of expectations of how you're supposed to behave in a public meeting. We do have children here. There's children here. I don't think that it's, yes, I know it's free speech, and it's not, free speech is free, hate speech is free speech. The time when it turns into something else and it's unconstitutional is not when it incites emotions, it's when it incites violence. That's when speech ceases to be free. That's the difference. You can't stand up in this meeting and scream fire because you want to. That's the difference. So yes, we have to be careful, but at the same time, we can have our policies, and then we just have to think about how to enforce them. And I think when he was president, Souders did a great job. You did a great job because you were talking about decorum. You were making it as part. You were laying out the ground rules like you would in your classroom. I saw those were teaching moments by you, Trustee Souders. And you know what? It was great. It was good. And so I think, again, President Briscoe, I'm going to just ask you to please contact LA Unified and get that presentation just to check it out.
I will also contribute. I've had my microphone turned off by the city of Huntington Beach, and I sued them. And I won. My attorney won a whole bunch of money. And I removed the microphone button away from the mayor and removed their illegal ordinance. In the case of Huntington Beach, there was an inane, idiotic law that said anybody that stands up at the podium and says something negative about anybody else, including elected officials, would be ruled out of order. The problem with number 3 could be that it could be looked at pre-published censorship, especially, but there are special rules and laws for schools and school boards because of children. So we should probably run this by OCDE and have them comment with their new staff on their thoughts about what we can do. And it says, wish to make, shall provide the presentation. Yeah, that's a difficult one. That sounds pretty prescriptive. Anyway, that's my view. Trustee Westwell?
I concur. I'd like to suggest that this is a first reading, that the superintendent go out and do some more research and contact other districts and perhaps our attorneys, and we can come up with some appropriate language that will pass muster. Thank you.
Trustee Souders?
I agree with both Trustee Westwell and you, President Briscoe. I think that's a good idea to have the superintendent look into this a little bit more carefully.
So what I'm
Can I get a point of clarification?
Oh, yes. Superintendent Hanson, I did not call that.
I'd just like a point of clarification. So are you moving in the direction that you would like to include this? Because one of the reasons that, let me give you a little background, we had been inconsistent of when do we allow people to make a presentation? Is it, when some people come at the last minute, so we said no, and then they were frustrated with us, well, you let person A make a presentation last week. So we did do some research with legal counsel, and they said that we needed to have some guidelines established. And so we established a guideline that people needed to give us a presentation 24 hours in advance. And so now we're putting it in our policy. That's why we did it. And let me say that the reason that we have done that is for the virus and for the format, to make sure that we have it on a format that can be read. But in our previous research, we can just have a rule, and as long as we state it, that we don't take that people cannot use our materials, and so they just have to use their 3 minutes and do whatever they want. So I need to know, are you leaning towards you want some kind of rule or you don't? So, because I have done some preliminary research, and this is what I've learned, that we need to actually state it if we're going to have it. If we don't state it, we don't have to do it.
So
but we need to be consistent.
Do a quick read down the board on this, the bifurcation of the question. Directionally, Trustee Westwell, are you looking for removal totally, or are you looking towards better and clearer language on what we can do to not review the material, what they present as their business, but to have the material 24 hours in advance so we can check format and viruses and safety? You want to take it out, or do you want to refine it better?
I would like to refine it.
Okay.
I think it's necessary. We've seen that it's necessary in the past, but I want it to pass muster both, you know, legally and everything else. I think we need some advice and better understanding of what is appropriate and what is not appropriate, and what kind of language is acceptable and not acceptable. I think those are the two big ones.
Thank you, Trustee Sowers.
I would concur with Trustee Westwell. I don't mind keeping it in there if that's the wish, if that's the will of the board. I do have my, I mean, I'm cautious about some of the concerns that I've already voiced here. I would like to find some legal opinions as to whether or not, or some opinions from other boards who've come across this issue as well, as to, you know, what our rights are as far as allowing speakers to make visual presentations or not allowing them to make visual presentations, what kind of language, what kind of images are allowed, whether or not that's something that we're required to do, whether or not that's something that the board wants to do. But I think that it's something that we need to look at more carefully, and I definitely think if we're going to put something like this in here, we should have the language basically protect ourselves and the speaker as well as much as possible, so that they know exactly where they stand and we know where we stand, and we can enforce any kind of rules that might in some way endanger the public, or more importantly the children that are in the audience.
Trustee Clayton Tarvin, remove it entirely or refine it?
Remove it entirely. And I believe that it will solve several issues. One being that then we don't have to have the superintendent and the board president being the arbiters of what is going to be allowed to be shown. That is very dangerous. That's just setting us up for lawsuits. First Amendment lawsuits. I just don't think that it's necessary. I think that if we give ample time, you know, we are one of the only boards, I have to just say this, that allows the public to speak in before the closed session at the beginning, during, right at the beginning of the meeting when the public comes at 6 p.m., at every single agenda item, and at the end. But it's irrelevant if it's by, yes, okay. You know, the Board of Supervisors doesn't do that. The law says they have to, but they don't. Guess what? They don't. And they continue to do it and continue to do it. Many city councils, LA Unified, Long Beach, they all just have prescripted times when you can speak. And they go, oh, wow, that's too bad. You've spoken once, so now you don't get to speak again. They do it at the city council. So our board allows for a lot of participation because we really believe in it. And when people come to the microphone, they say what they're going to say. But if we have something and we're going to review it ahead of time, and the board president and the superintendent go, oh my gosh, this is, I don't know. And then they go, well, now I'm going to sue you because you didn't let me show my presentation. It's just a bad precedent to set. That's my opinion. I would encourage, again, President Briscoe and Superintendent Hansen to check into this with legal counsel. I would advise you to do that, but I would err on the side of don't have it at all.
Trustee Singer?
I'm torn. I agree. I think that, you know, anytime you put the liability of somebody checking what is going to be shown ahead of time and then those individuals making that decision, it could be a huge liability issue. So I am concerned about that. But I also don't want to limit free speech. So I want people to be able to speak their minds. But I do think that we are opening ourselves for the liability. So I think allowing people to speak and tell us what they want to share with us, and if they write a letter and present it to us, I think that's sufficient in my opinion. So I would say I wouldn't do it. I would leave it out.
Well, now we have an interesting, I would say leave it out too, so you have sort of a 3-2 view of things. So make of it what you will. This is information. Trustee Westwell?
A couple of points that I just want to make during this conversation that come up. One is the computer. One solution is just to either have them provide their own computer, or we could provide a separate computer that's not attached to our network. I'm sure we got extra computers laying around, and that would solve that. And the last one is if they provided in advance a presentation and staff looks at it and decides that it could be objectionable, well, then we have an opportunity to alert the public and the children and everybody else that there's some material about to be presented that could be offensive, and you might want to leave the room if you're easily offendable. So there's a solution to that as well. The public comments portion of our meeting is where we invite the public to participate in our meeting and speak directly to us about their issues. And so to start shutting that down is not advisable in my opinion. They're the ones paying the bills. Thank you.
Trustee Saunders?
I'm in no way in favor of shutting down public comments in any way, shape, or form. That's not my intent. I don't think that the two things fall within the same realm. One is the use of our projector and our screen to project images, which in no way is, in my mind, included in public comments. But I would like to find that out as to whether or not what our rights are. I think people can come to the microphone and say whatever it is that they want to say. I do like Trustee Westwell's idea of being able to ask people to leave the room if there is something offensive. The other thing that I would say this does not address is the time limit, or the amount of time that it takes for an image to boot up or a program to boot up. Do we start their time at they're allowed 3 minutes? Do we start it when they start to fiddle around with the computer, or when Miss Lee starts to fiddle around with the computer? And if it's wrong, do we give them more time if there's some sort of problem, if it's not running? These are all issues that come about with this. You could end up having 4 or 5 people with reports and them taking 10 minutes each because of technical issues. So I don't know. I'm willing to go with the will of the board, but I'm just saying these are things you might want to consider before you just open up the computer system.
Who wrote the words? Who put this together? Superintendent Hanson?
In collaboration with Cindy Lee, yes, I did. And it's based on our past experience because this has
I had a question. Is there anything implied or stated in the item 3 that says that you'll review what's there and that you have any right to not present it or show it or anything? I don't see anything in there about doing anything. It just says we need the medium.
It is intended that we look at it, and many of the things that you said tonight about alerting, that I could alert the board president that, hey, there's some pornographic pictures, or there's some graphic pictures, or, you know, this is the content to alert.
Trustee Clayton Carmen?
Again, I want to caution the board, think about this pretty seriously. And I might add that if we're asking people to send it or give it to the superintendent's office 24 hours in advance, why don't they just email it to the board? Isn't the whole point that they want to present it to the board? Isn't that, or is this to make a show and to harass or to show pornographic pictures? I mean, this is a pre-K to 8 school district. Why would we allow anything like that? This is an absurd, we're going down absurd paths. I think that if they have the ability, if we're going to say you can bring it in 24 hours ahead of time, they could just email it to the board. If their target audience is the Board of Trustees, because that's what they're here to present to. They're not here to present to the public. They're not here to present to the man in the moon. They're here to present to the Board of Trustees. Okay? So if that's the case, why don't they just send it to us in an email and we can view it? There you go. Case closed.
Any other comments? Trustee Westwell. Trustee Westwell.
Well, once they send it to us, then it's been received on our network and it's passed all the virus stuff, and it can easily go onto the computer, and then there's really no excuse for us to be able to put the presentation up there. I mean, if you've got somebody who wants to talk about the budget and it's got all this numbers and stuff on there, a lot of times it's much easier to do it in that sort of format, and then you can just point your little laser pointer into it. I can go either way on this at all, as well. Before we are done here, though, tonight, since we've talked about so many things, I'd like to hear from the superintendent what she believes the consensus is to move forward. Because I'm not clear where we're at.
Superintendent Hanson, would you share your consensus sensor?
I heard 3 board members that said take this out, and I heard what I heard, I can't remember the exact numbers of people who said this, but based on the conversation, I would like to research to confirm again that it is okay to not allow the public to use our system. I want to just confirm that it's okay to say no. That's that's where I'm leaning. The other item that I need clarification on that was discussed is we slashed out the term open session because it's not written anywhere on the printed agenda. And so that was a question that came up of why it was taken out, and I didn't get any clarification if you wanted to keep my recommended slash outs.
There was a request for a time certain number to be put in. 6 o'clock.
No, well, that's already in part of our policy. So it states, we'll find it for you in a minute. So,
Mr. President, I suggested that we put back the scratched out open session because it's referenced in Board Bylaw 9323 on
What
page
page, trustee?
1 and 2.
Page 1 of 2.
Page 131, number 1 and 2. It mentions open session, open session.
Open session, 4 sentences, 4 lines down.
you know, it's just important that we know what you want, so we are consistent with the printing of our agenda.
So what we said to put in 6 o'clock as opposed to start of open session. Is that what I understood?
Yeah.
That's I think we already discussed that. Just change it to, and then the approximate wording is somewhere else, and that's not what we're talking about right now tonight.
There are I know that we work diligently to start right at 6, but there may be occasions that we cannot start right at 6, and I would caution us from using that. That's why I say that it says, I would agree with what it says on our printed agenda. I think our language is appropriate.
Trustee Singer?
I don't appreciate this. I don't think we should put the time either, because there are times we have gone over just a little bit, and to be fair to the public, we shouldn't specify a time. We try to be there by 6, but it doesn't always happen. So I think the way it was worded previously, I think would work. Secondly, going back to the visual presentations, again, I as well, and I think we can all agree, we don't want to limit anybody's right to speak. No one. Everybody should have the right to come and make presentations and tell us what they want to share. I think this is a very intricate concern, so I do think that we do need to research it more. I think we do have to talk to legal, make sure we know our boundaries, what we can and cannot do. But again, I don't want to limit anyone's speech. I want to make sure everybody can. But it is a very slippery slope that if we're not very specific and clear on, we could get ourselves in huge liability. So I think it is something that we definitely need to continue to research and make sure that we figure out what are really our legal boundaries here.
Trustee Westphal? I see your hand raised.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm looking at page 135, AR 9323, the open session slash out. And it looks as though that we're proposing to remove this from our agenda. And then I refer back to tonight's agenda, and I see that it's already scratched out. So why is that?
You know, when we, may I speak?
Superintendent Hanson, please elucidate.
When we bring recommendations for the AR and board policy, what we do is look at our practice so we can align. So sometimes we slowly move into a practice, and so we try to align the actual practice with what's written in the board policy. So we recognize that that's been in the board policy where it says open session, but that hasn't been included on our agenda for quite some time. Also, legal counsel has spoken to me about, you know, what is the intent? What's a reasonable person gonna think? Okay, a reasonable person knows that closed session begins at 5:15 and open session begins at 6. If occasionally you begin your meeting at 6:05, that's reasonable. If every meeting consistently you're beginning at 6:30, then that's not reasonable when you have your open time. So you have to look, I think that what we've written is reasonable. So I would, and again, we bring forward recommendations based on what we see as best practice and trying to align our practice. So the only one in this within here that I would recommend that we remove and research is the part about the presentation. The other recommendations I believe we should keep as recommended.
So what I'm hearing is the open session has been in the ARs for a substantial period of time, but we just haven't been doing it.
That's right, writing it. We've been doing it, but we haven't written it on the agenda.
Right. And that's concerning because the board approves both bylaws and the ARs. And so what's happening, this is a concern of mine throughout the board policies and the ARs, that things are changing without board approval. And that's kind of what I'm noticing right here. And so I'm pointing it out. I'm sure it's nothing nefarious, but a reoccurring thing that I see in this district is a lack of attention to detail. This is one of them. It's a minor thing to most people, but language matters. And it matters later on when you get sued. And so I'm a stickler for this stuff, and I'm a stickler for the board approving stuff. It's concerning that we find ourselves where we are tonight, scratching out something that's not already there.
With all due respect, we all come to the board meetings every week. We all look at the agenda every week, and no one's really noticed it until it's time this year to sit down and look at it. So we're all at fault. Trustee Westwell?
Agreed, and I'm part of that.
No one has brought it up to me before. Cindy and I go through this and say, what do we think should be changed? What aren't we doing? So.
And I agree. I totally agree with what you're saying. But we need to follow the protocols and the rules. That's very important. And so again, I'm not trying to put blame on anybody. I'm not trying to point the finger at anybody. I'm trying to do things by the book, by the letter of the law, and following things and making sure there's attention to detail. And some of them seem really insignificant and some of them aren't. But this is the time to talk about them, and so that's why I'm bringing them up. I didn't notice them because I don't go home every night and read through the ARs and the board policies and compare them against what we're doing. It comes to light when we have a meeting like this.
Again, what's reasonable and to what harm is it? What great harm are we doing to children or to the district by not including a word? I think we have to look at that.
Right, and that's not the harm. The harm isn't to children. The harm is to the public and the public perception of things happening without board approval, and that's my concern.
Thank you, Trustee Westwell. Is there any further discussion? Is that a hand raise or a roll raise? Trustee Singer?
I think that's what we're doing right now. We're cleaning things up. None of us noticed it. I am as guilty as anybody else. I didn't notice it wasn't there before either. So I don't think, we all need to work together. We need to come together and realize that we are humans and that we are going to miss things sometimes. And this is the time to clean it up, figure out, oh, we missed a dog here and we need to put it there. And this is the time to do that. This is why we're having this. So I appreciate you realizing that we haven't been doing it and we need to clean it up and correct it. So thank you for doing that.
Trustee Westwell?
Yes, Superintendent, you mentioned that a reasonable person would discern when the open session is. If we write open session at the beginning of our agenda here, a reasonable person will assume that that's when open session starts. If you don't have it in there, a reasonable person is going to have to guess when that open session is. So I'm in favor of leaving it there, but it's up to the body to decide what to do.
So is there any further discussion? Trustee Clayton Farrell?
Honestly, this has gone on too long here.
I think
Call for the
so.
question.
So there's been a call for.
There's no question. This is not an action item.
So I can just say that I think we've had enough discussion. Superintendent Hanson, do you feel you have enough direction from the board discussion? Thank you very much, and I'm going to close this discussion. Yes, we close the discussion. Any further other public communications to the Board of Trustees? Clerk?
We have none.
One hand.
I thought I did see something.
Well, point.
Superintendent Hanson?
We have to remember that we can say, do we have any blue cards? And then we, just as a reminder, as the chair or as a clerk, we need to say, is there anyone who else would like to speak?
Thank you. And is there anybody else who would like to speak? Please make your way to the podium.
Hello, my name is
Point of
Emily
order.
Anderson.
One moment, the superintendent has.
Superintendent Hanson?
I think the way, I just want to point this out, the way our new policy is proposed is that people would either, at the first public comment, would either fill out a card or let us know that they want to speak before 6 o'clock. All right? That's my understanding. And okay, so it help clarify, because we're the managers of this.
I thought I saw another card turned in. That's why that's not the second blue card for the second speaker.
So the whole gist of this conversation is people don't have to fill out a blue card. So people have to let us know that they want to speak. It says this in the policy. They need to let us know if they want to speak before 6 o'clock. And if they let us know before 6 o'clock that they want to speak, either by alerting us or filling out a blue card, we'll let them speak in the first public comment. Is that how you want to run it?
That's what I'm thinking. Trustee Clayton-Turner?
Okay, maybe I was unclear before. So the first public comments period, that one, those cards should be turned in before 6 o'clock. This one, no.
Right, I understand that, but I'm saying is they don't have to fill out a card. If somebody comes to me at 5:55 and says, I want to speak in the first public comment, we don't need a card. We just say, okay, now it's your turn.
I would like to see a request made to fill out a card. If they say I refuse, then we smile and have my hand.
Right.
Point of order,
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes, Trustee
We're
Westphal.
discussing the agenda item that you have closed out. So we're now on public comments. And so this conversation, while I wish we would have extended it, and we could do it next time, I don't think it's appropriate that we're discussing it now.
We can have a second reading. So thank you very much, Trustee Westphal. Superintendent Hanson, does that satisfy you?
I'm still a bit unclear, so I will seek clarification at the next meeting.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, would you carry on, please?
Somewhat to what I was actually want to speak about. I was just wanting to clarify some of what was said tonight myself. It seemed like you were talking about possibly not using these in lieu of raising hands, the blue cards in lieu of raising hands, which I would, to some degree, just as a person of the public, favor, because this is a large waste of paper, if not entirely necessary. And then I also wanted to point out, I was just noticing on this agenda paper right here, where it says, please note, all times are approximate and are provided for convenience only. The order of business may be changed without notice. So to my feeling as a parent, if you guys in your 5:15 meeting are discussing something that's pertinent and important based on the business of the night, if you go over 5-10 minutes, I'm perfectly okay with that, because if it's important and something you don't want to leave undiscussed because it's the topic at hand for that night, then that seems a well-spent use of time. And it says right here, in bold, in caps, may be changed without notice. So if, I'm here with my kids and it's late and I'm leaving right now. But I don't, my husband works evenings. It's either I come and I bring them, or sometimes I can get a babysitter, sometimes I can't. It's important to me sometimes that I am here. There's things I want to see, topics I want to be, involved with, so I choose to bring them. Bring stuff for them to do, and I think they do pretty okay with it. So I just wanted clarification on the blue cards because, I mean, especially in, you know, we were discussing costs and stuff, this is thick cardstock paper. I would think that could possibly save some dollars if you weren't using these versus, you know, throwing it out there to somebody, you know, raising a hand or not. I just want some clarification on that myself because I was a little confused.
Thank you. Did I ask you to state your name?
Well, I did, but then you cut me off.
Would you state your name, please?
My name's Emily Anderson.
We're not able to dialogue and discuss with you, but those
Okay.
are interesting points. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
You have other speakers that I'm aware of?
Thank you. Clerk Souders. Board of Trustees Roundtable. Trustee Souders.
I have no requested. Oh, roundtable, you're skipping over future agenda items?
Oh, I missed that, you're right. So, are there any future agenda items?
Yes, please.
Trustee Westwell.
Mr. President, I'd like to see you bring forward a agenda item discussing our unneeded security guard at the back of the room. I think the time has come to talk about that. Thank you.
Any other agenda items? So, Board of Trustees Roundtable. Trustee Souders.
All right, thank you. Once again, thank you for coming and burning the midnight oil with us. I appreciate it. I'm going to keep it super short since we are already past 9 o'clock. I will say happy holidays, happy Hanukkah. I was looking it up on my phone during the meeting. It just ended yesterday, I believe. But still, happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas to those of you who celebrate that. And we will see you back here in January.
Trustee Clayton Tarvin.
I don't have all that much to say, but just again, I would hope that before the meeting in January that we come to get information that we need to be able to make appropriate decisions on that board policy about our meeting conduct and all these different things so that we're clear. I'm not sure I want to get rid of blue cards. I don't think so. But I also want to make it really clear to the public when are the times that we accept speakers and so forth. And just remind the public that you have a lot of opportunities to speak, and we welcome that. Just to look into with our legal counsel, what are the ramifications of doing one thing or another. So I'll leave that in your hands there, President Briscoe. And I do want to commend you for running a very ordered and orderly and nice meeting for your first meeting. Good job. I was pleased to be able to nominate you and to see that you were elected and that you will serve in an honorable fashion for this year upcoming. Thank you.
Trustee Singer.
Thank you all for staying and being in with us. I just want to wish everybody happy holidays, Merry Christmas to all of our staff. Thank you for all the hard work you put behind the scenes. We really appreciate it. We hope you can get a little bit of rest and get some special time with your families. Thank you for hanging in there with us. We appreciate it.
Trustee Westwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too, going back to the blue cards, I think we should keep the blue cards, help us determine whether we're going to shorten the public comment times. It helps us run the meeting better to know who's actually out there and what they want to talk about before we allow them to talk. It helps us organize and run the meeting more effectively. The times that we start, I think they should be approximate times and should be stated as such. There may be times when we're in closed session and we need to stay for a few extra minutes to finish things up. That's what the city council does. That's what other boards do. They say these times are approximate. And again, if we start exceeding our time limits, we need to change our policies. But minutes here and there aren't really a big deal. I'd also like to wish everyone who's still here, and staff, and cabinet, and board members have a wonderful winter holiday and Merry Christmas to everybody. Thank you.
And for me, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and good cheer. This will be the last time you'll see me until next year. Cindy, I'm hurrying as fast as I can. That concludes my comments. There'll be no closed session tonight. We will return to open session right now. There's nothing to report. Oh, I'm at a point where I need need to have a motion to adjourn at 9:11.
Move to adjourn.
Made by trustee Souter, seconded by trustee Singer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? We are adjourned.
Aye.